director at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences of the School of International Biodesign. So worked with academia quite a bit. There is a very interesting thing. The day until which we were students and fellows creating innovations on a design board, wearing shorts, playing the guitar in between, we were very much adored across the board. The day that we founded a company, there was this invisible wall, glass wall between us and the academia. You are a profiteer. It was almost like we had stolen something from somewhere. We cannot support you. This is a profit-making company. We are the government. So how can we support a cohort of people if we have this is almost like it's interesting that we are sitting at Dr. Ambedkar's place, because I have to say, at the cost of being bitter, I have to say this: there's the kind of discrimination for-profit entities face from government entities. It reminds me of untouchability every time. How are you in this room even? This is a room for, and so on. So we have to get rid of that. We have to realize that the motive is the same. We are all working for the society. For-profit is an essential route that one has to take. Otherwise, everything will stay on the whiteboard. The next one is, of course, providing incubation and support once the company has been formed. Sixth is, I think there is a need to redefine some of the metrics. A lot of emphasis was there earlier on within the academia on publication of papers. And that seemed to be the metric. Nobody really seemed to care what is the end outcome of publishing those papers. And then the regime changed, and now I think the emphasis is more on patents. But one really needs to step back a bit and ask a question. What is the worth of a patent? There is so much emphasis on going and filing patents. What is a patent really for an enterprise? It is, from where I am looking at it, it's just a barrier to entry for competition in order to sustain viability of the product and the enterprise. But it's just one of the ways in which one can prevent entry of competitors. There are many other ways. And I'm sure people in the room are well aware of what are those different barriers. But I think this emphasis on patents sometimes I feel also prevents us from building products that could have really helped change lives, but had no patent benefits, so people sort of navigated away from them. We have to also encourage lean experimentation. Very correctly, as I was saying, that experimenting with a product in the community, as I was also mentioning, is extremely important. We cannot create a final product on day one. Some person said that if you are not embarrassed by your first launch product, you are launching way too late. So that lean experimentation methodology has to come in. So the focus of education, from where I see it, within the academia seems to be very, very technocratic and very, very academic, which is all great from the point of view of technique and from the point of view of academics. But as was being mentioned, creating a product in a real life requires a ton of other skill sets which have to do with monetization, marketing, sales, and if that is not the kind of expertise within the said institution, that tends to get ignored. I'll just share a quick story and move towards stopping myself. All of us might have heard of Mullah Nasiruddin. So Mullah Nasiruddin was once looking for something all over the road. It was a well-lit road, recently built, and street lamps were put up. So he was looking something all over the road. Somebody asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I'm looking for the keys to my house." Said, "Where did you drop them?" He said, "I must have dropped them near my house somewhere." So, "Why are you looking here?" He said, "It's too dark near my house and it is very well lit here, so let me look here." So we tend to focus on things that we are really good at, and we tend to ignore, and it is a very normal human tendency to ignore the things that may be important but we may not be good at. So we need, and that is where the requirement of cross-functional collaboration comes in. And charity must begin at home. When we are teaching these enterprises to be focused on outcomes, we are teaching these enterprises to do lean experimentation, be focused on the end user. We as incubators also have to follow the same thing and have a very clear vision about what type of enterprises we want to create, what type of impact those enterprises will have to create, and what are going to be the metrics with which we will study the performance of these enterprises as well as the performance of the incubator. So laying that down very clearly really helps. Last point was about we have to be ready with failures and everything. Sir has already emphasized, so I will not go into the detail of that. I'll just end by one more couplet. that kind of summarizes for me this whole road of innovation and entrepreneurship. It goes something like, तूफान कर रहा था मेरे अज़्म का तवाफ़. So तवाफ़ here is perambulation, परिक्रमा करते हैं, मंदिर में जाते हैं, तो अज़्म is greatness. तूफान कर रहा था मेरे अज़्म का तवाफ़, दुनिया समझ रही थी कश्ती भंवर में है. That's all. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Avijit. And you know, it's that I'm the last one, and I was crossing off all the points that I wanted to say, but that's great that you have mentioned. So my name is Satya. As you can see, I'm a molecular genetics person by training and also in policy. I've done a couple of startups. One of them, I was part of an amazing journey, an organization called BIRAC, where I was a founding head of strategy and entrepreneurship development there. It's a government startup, but still it's a startup. And of course, I've learned a lot from other startups as well. Through BIRAC, I think I designed around 12 programs nationally, implemented them, and interacted possibly in my 5 years, close to 800 to 1,000 startups, built around 31 incubators and all that. But before I say anything, let me time it, in a sense that I shouldn't overstretch myself, even though Avijit has mentioned everything that I wanted to say. But you can see one thing, right? Entrepreneurs are poets at heart. Right, so and poetry and entrepreneurship possibly, because they imagine so many things, they go beyond the boundaries, right? So, and I must also say that the last session was fabulous, absolutely gorgeous session. I think I met Rahul Parag once in Rashtrapati Bhavan. We were sitting next to each other, but fabulous session. The other thing I must also confess is that in some way, I'm a design person too, because I think design as a foundational concept should be at any unit, whether it's a product, whether it's a building, whether it's an organization, whether it's an ecosystem, state, country, and humanity, right? So when we think about climate change, what is the design focus that we should have? So I think we should, at least personally, I feel the concept of design is not unitary, only linked to products, but actually linked to whatever unit that you want to do. The other disclaimer I should say is that many of the ideas that I have gained over the last 15 years or 20 years have been modulated, refined by people that I've interacted with, such as Dr. Bhan. I see Gurumurthy here on that corner, sitting there. Malati was here. I don't know where she's vanished. And many others, Professor PVM Rao, and many startups, many entrepreneurs, many poets like Avijit as well, right? So that's fun. It is. So I, on a day-to-day job, currently after BIRAC, I now am the director of global innovation for a non-profit organization called PATH. PATH operates in 70 countries, 22 country offices. We look at innovations that we can take all the way to implementation. You can look up PATH and public health as a Google, and you'll find our website. And there's tons of amazing case studies there. We've been in existence for 40 years, and I'm trying to build a platform for medtech innovation within PATH, so that we can look for innovation coming out of India and take them all the way to the doorstep of people. So that's my introduction. So, while Avijit and Chandrasekhar have mentioned amazing points, in terms of, I liked his prescription, and Chandrasekhar mentioned, anyway, I've also met him once in front of IIT Delhi, introduced by a friend of mine called Sagat. So serendipity is very important, I do agree. And I was, scribbling, as you can see, of some of my thoughts. In a sense, I've just done 2.5 minutes, so that's okay. I've got another five minutes? Okay, that's fine, 5. Okay. That's the worry about going last, right? You have to differentiate yourself, but you have less time, but that's okay, under pressure. One thing is, Amazing that Rahul and Parag mentioned about this building. When you come into this building and you just see Ambedkar there, aren't you humbled by that, by that statue? I mean, I was completely humbled because this is the first time inside this. And to be honest, we have a fantastic designed thing that Ambedkar built, right? The Constitution. Look at the Constitution, read about the Constitution. It talks about justice, it talks about fraternity, liberty, of course, equality. And when you designers think about empathy, where is empathy in these 4 or 5 things? I think empathy is spread across all. If you are empathetic, but only for your own kind, then you're not doing justice, right? So empathy as a value system should cut across all of that. And I was thinking about it when I walked past his statue. I still have hair standing here. Think about it, that this person who dealt with so much of negativity in his life, right, could actually come out with something that was, well, we're going through it right now from today, right? Because of that, we do voting and we do choose our people. So just a thought. Now about the question about, how do we take these things, our idea, he's right, ideas are dime a dozen cheap, some ideas are excellent, right? Some ideas are hidden. Some beautiful poetry was only found after Ghalib was dead, right? So how do you find and unearth those and bring them? How many of you have actually gone to Ghalib's house? Anybody? Great, right. So, I mean, when I went there, I was like 6-7 years back, I was there and they were rebuilding it. And I was thinking, oh my God, just hopefully you keep the flavor of it, similar to what you thought about when you were trying to build this building. So here is the thing. So, how about bringing those innovations from the bench, from the lab, from the minds of our amazing young students, all the way to the doorstep of people, of community. One thing I realized is, as I said, design is a foundational aspect, has to cut across. So you have to tell our students, including people at my age, I'm turning 45 in a couple of months, that design has to be integrated. And I'm a molecular genetics person. I know that how you can design genes, right? It's going to, of course, unfortunately, they call it design of babies and all of that, but that's true. You can really design anything. You can tell the cell to be whatever it wants to be. You can actually make the cell reverse it, right? So design is a fundamental concept, and not linked to just one product, right? At a very ecosystem level as well. So the other is, he mentioned about design for manufacturing and all of that. That has to be integrated. And I think, Gurumurthy, PVM, Rao, and others have been amazing on that. How do you think about design for manufacturing, design for regulation? When you're building products, how does regulation impact you, right? So that's again, some kind of holders, that anchors that you should think about. The other thing is, Sidney Brenner, I don't know whether you know Sidney Brenner, but from the world that I come from in genetics, Sidney Brenner is a person who found out something called mRNA, right? So aapke yahan DNA hai, and then there is protein. Proteins are the joint secretaries of the world, they do the work, right? Okay, by the way, there's also, I need to say some disclaimer that, whatever I'm saying sometimes is my personal opinion and shouldn't be attributed to my organization's past or present, right? I should have said that in the front. So Sidney Brenner thought about mRNA. So mRNA, what it does is, it's a bridging thing. So you have DNA, it's highly dense, coded, and then the proteins are everything and anything. Your immunity is protein, antibodies are protein, right? But there is mRNA that really decodes the dense DNA and then goes through a cycle, and then, it's coded into protein as well. So midwives, right? So where are the midwives of innovation in your academic institutions, right? Who are they? What kind of DNA they have? Are they open enough to go and knock at the doors of your faculty, knock at the doors of industry, as our previous session, panelist was saying about industry, academia connect, and also knocks the doors of your hostels and student residences, where a lot of innovations are also happening, right? I mean, I was told by P.V.M. Rao a couple of months back that there could be around 70 startups, entrepreneurial startups in the IIT hostels itself, right? So who are those group of people who are knocking at these doors and then kind of system integrating that? So that's one. And my last point, at 7 minutes now, is about entrepreneurialism. I think is, as a culture, is very important. So we have fantastic entrepreneurs like Avijit, but I feel, the entrepreneurial culture can seep into the government, the academia, and in the industry, right? So entrepreneurialism as a basic value system is something when you dent the universe of the system that you're part of, right? And so you need not be a startup person. Nobody wants to force anybody to become a startup. But can you become entrepreneurial in the systems that you are part of? And if we as a collective, as a country do that, then we'll at least try to transform anywhere between 5-10% now to maybe 30%. China, we're always worried about China. Of course, China has gone so far ahead. I've only been there once, and when I landed in Shanghai in 2012 and took that, maglev or whatever train from the airport to the city center, it was going at 400 kilometers an hour, okay? We are thinking about it, I think, now to build something like that. We don't know whether we'll build it or not. So let's not worry about too much about China, but can we organically, in a directed evolution way, again, design is a lot of directionality, from scalar to vector, build a system which is entrepreneurial, right? And I will end it here. The last point, is I think we have to create spaces for complexities to exist. So people like, Chakravarti and others, I found it amazing, the kind of work that you said. I was just, completely enthralled sitting there. Is that, can we as a collective, it is our responsibility to kind of impart some bits to our younger generation to understand that complexities and being in nonlinear systems is part of life. And from those, you will evolve some products that will take it forward. So, and while that is true, our goal is to reduce randomness in life, right? We do produce amazing spacecraft to go to the space, but after 70 years, we are unable to build roads without potholes. I don't know, where is that? What is that linkage that it's missing? I don't have answers for that. So being entrepreneurial in any system, finding the group of people within the system who are entrepreneurial to actually have the DNA to knock at Avijit's door, to knock at professor's door, to knock at the student's door, and say, how can I help you, right? To train them in those systems, and then have the ability, as Malathi just came in, I mentioned her name, to really tie it up with reducing randomness, because randomness is great in the early part, but you have to bring also systematic. The last point is bureaucracy, right? I think processes doesn't mean bureaucratic, right? People are bureaucratic. You can have amazing processes, but still nimble. It's the people who make organizations very bureaucratic. So with that, I'll end. Sorry.
I wanted this to be an interactive session, but now we almost killed our time, and we are told that I have to wrap up. Anyway, so the take-home message from all that has been said for me is that, you see, Professor Rao talked in the morning that in the world until today, ever since this startup thing has come, we have some 360 odd unicorns, companies which are valued above $1 billion, and out of which 60% are Indian companies. And he just mentioned that when we talk about innovation and entrepreneurship or making money out of the product, it is the entrepreneur, is the guy who makes money, is actually the main guy. And we are extremely successful. The 60% of unicorns that you see in India are very young people who have played with their ideas.
Why do you have to focus on unicorns only?
No, I'm just coming to it. Give me a minute. So what I'm telling is that for the young people who are studying and have an idea or a product and want to make a startup, often have a fear. They are, what I mean to say that it is somehow, when we're talking about China or talking about anything, probably making startup and making money, we are extremely successful. It's in our genes. So for students who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs, you have to just look inward yourself. And as far as we are concerned, people who are running the system, who are creating the ecosystem and managing the ecosystem, for us, as he pointed out and you pointed out, we have to focus on two things, that we have to just handhold you, but in a very, very distance approach, in a freedom. We give you the freedom to play with your ideas, to develop your product, enter market, but not interfere much with you. And as he pointed out, we also have to pay attention that encourage failure. Not that you fail, but if you fail, we tell that, okay, you are right path, take the next step. Not that, like the typical academia, the failures are to be not looked at and the successfuls are to be glorified, is probably not good for DIC ecosystem.
Just what we did now by just focusing on unicorns.
No. I tell by unicorn that they should become entrepreneur, because Indians are very successful. We are talking too much about China.
So the design of it, our all conversation is about unicorns. Go to Germany, there's like so many amazing SMEs. They may not be unicorns.
We also start.
They're very good in IP, patent, regulations. They're not unicorns.
I don't have to even go that far. I mean, we in a university, we started with 10 startups. 2 of them are valued above 5 crores now in just 2 years. So people are doing well. So maybe we wrap it up. I take a couple of questions. One question I think that I expect from people here is that whenever you have a design, is it worthy of a company or not? How do you decide? How do you decide to go towards a company or not go towards a company when you are developing a product? How do you exactly guide your students is one question which we need to sort out, but I must take some questions from the audience first. Any question? Anybody has any questions about design to entrepreneurship or product to entrepreneurship?
So while we think about the questions, I can answer your first one because I have just a one-line answer. So I just give a one-line answer to all the students on this. Are we creating enough value for enough number of people to pay us enough to build and deliver the product to them sustainably, scalably, and profitably? If the answer is yes, then it's worth a company, otherwise not.
So, if you do that, and you also have to think about orphan drugs. There are not enough people, there are not enough payers there, but you have to design for people who, what is orphan drugs? Orphan drugs are drugs for diseases where they are rare diseases, right? Maybe 1 in, 10,000 people, 15,000 or 20, I don't know the statistics, but there are people, maybe Pompe disease, for example, is a disease that is very rare disease. Maybe globally 100,000 people or 50,000 people, but there has to be someone thinking about them too, right? So you've got to think like that. If you are being taught empathy, please do think empathy, right?
I think there are a lot of students and young designers here, and you should take, we often fail this in guiding our students. Whenever they come with an idea to us, we often get carried away by the very novelty of the idea or the problem it is solving. We do not think much about scale up business or anything. We just purely go by the challenge that the idea has, and this is purely an academic approach. So just getting encouraged by your teachers that yes, work on the idea does not necessarily mean that it will become a company. You should think about the public that will eventually buy it, and you will make money. Maybe I end the session since there is no questions I'm seeing. Probably one thing that DIC should do differently than what he commented in between, that contempt for profit is what we probably, in our own system, we should create a culture where we academicians do not have contempt for profit. Because somehow if that is not encouraged in our system, entrepreneurship will also not happen in our center. Thank you. Thank you for staying for the session.
I'd like to extend a thank you note from the DIC team for sharing such significant insights and points of reflection for us. I'd request Professor Biswas to felicitate the guests. I request Sanjukta ma'am to felicitate Biswas sir.
And thank you to you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So this brings us to the final and the last session of today's DIC meet. The session is called IPR and Technology Licensing. So I request Dr. Purushottam, Chairman and Managing Director, National Research Development Corporation. I request Mr. Vikrant Rana, Managing Partner, SSRANA and Co-Patent Trademark, Copyright Design Filing in India, and Dr. Milathi Lakshmi Kumaran, Director, Lakshmi Kumaran and Siddharan Attorney, to please come up on the stage. The session will be moderated by Professor B. Gurumurthy, DIC Coordinator, IISc Bangalore. Thank you. Sorry. Another short announcement. We are not breaking for tea right now, so please remain seated. I really request you to remain seated. Okay. Short revision, we can all break for a tea.